I'm pleased to welcome everyone joining us today for our celebration of the 2020 graduating class. So my name is Mark Giesbrecht. I've been a professor of computer science for the last 19 years at Waterloo, and for the past 6 years, I've been lucky enough to be the director of the David R. Chariton School of Computer Science. And as of July 1 this year, I'm very honored to become the 12th Dean of the Faculty of Mathematics. Soon you will meet our presenters. But before you do, our esteemed alumni, James and Jennifer Hamilton, have a brief message they would like to share with the class of 2020.
Hello, and congratulations to the math class of 2020. This is Jennifer Hamilton speaking from the Isle of Gia in Scotland, and I graduated from Waterloo in 1997. Over the last 8 years, we have circled the world in a small boat and have seen some amazing things, ranging from touring Fjordland in New Zealand to spending a few months in Hawaii, to anchoring below twin 300-foot waterfalls in northern Australia, to standing on the peaks of mountains in Norway over a mile above our boat anchored below. Prior to this adventure, I spent 26 years in the software industry, and when I retired to do the boating adventure, I was a development lead for the JavaScript engine in Microsoft Internet Explorer.
And I'm James Hamilton, Vice President and Distinguished Engineer at Amazon Web Services. I graduated with Jennifer from the University of Waterloo Math Department back in 1997. Although many of you may be a little disappointed not to have an in-person graduation this year, the ceremony was never what Jennifer and I reflect back on and really value from our time at the University of Waterloo. It's the impact that the university and the degree we got there has on our lives. For me, graduation at Waterloo was a step towards freedom and flexibility and had a big impact on much I've done since then. Our degrees and what we learned at Waterloo have paved the way to rewarding jobs at Microsoft and Amazon. I've had an opportunity to work with some of the best in the world in compilers, databases, and cloud computing. Over the years, companies have trusted me enough to give me roles that really pushed me to learn, gave me the opportunity to help shape products like IBM DB2, Microsoft SQL Server, and Amazon Web Services. Each of these products is used all over the world, and I fully expect they'll stay relevant decades from now. When I reflect on graduating from Waterloo 23 years ago, I'm most thankful for all the jobs I've had since, all the opportunities I've had since, and all the great people I've worked with over the years.
I agree that freedom was a big part of what we gained from Waterloo, but for me, even stronger was having in-demand skills from a well-respected institution. Wherever I wanted to live, whatever area of software I was currently finding most interesting, I can have a good job, work with smart people in a challenging environment, and always have the resources to be able to really enjoy life. When each of you look back on your time at the University of Waterloo 25 years from now, your list might be different from James and I, but we're confident that each of you will have reasons to look back on the hard work you put in at the university and be thankful for all you took away from your time here. Congratulations to each of you in the math class of 2020. We hope the next 25 years are as exciting and rewarding for you as the last 25 years have been for James and I.
Indeed. Congratulations.
Now I'm really pleased to introduce your panelist and moderator for this session. Falah Shazib is a fourth-year student majoring in computer science and pure mathematics, and she'll be moderating today's session. She is currently an XR developer intern at Unity. Falah is involved in Women in Tech initiatives and the VR community at Waterloo. She will lead the discussion with Larry Smith. Larry is director of the University of Waterloo's Problem Lab, whose sole mandate is to help find and understand important problems. Larry is also an adjunct associate professor of economics and is a member of the Conrad School of Entrepreneurship and Business. He's a recipient of the University of Waterloo's Distinguished Teaching Award. Larry has taught over 5,000 math students and is the proud recipient of the Most Quoted Prof Award in Math News. Larry's video, Why You Will Fail to Have a Great Career, posted on TED.com and YouTube, has been viewed more than 6 million times. His most recent book is No Fears, No Excuses, What You Need to Have a Great Career.
Thank you, Mark. All right, welcome, Larry. I'm really looking forward to this talk. Just to get started, I know you've been teaching for a while and you've taught students the last 4 recessions. How were the careers of those new grads affected?
Well, it's a pleasure to participate in this event. I really would like to just share the experiences of previous math students with respect to how they coped with recessions. I and the math students go back a long way, since that association starts in 1981, and I thank you for your diplomacy in saying that I've been here for a while. That would be putting it mildly. The reactions, so what I want to do is just report what the experiences of the previous students. And I want to do it very honestly, because in difficult times, it's really important to be completely candid about the situation. And so from what's happened the 4 previous times, where the students or the graduates grouped themselves, there were some who had their careers deflected, either delayed because they could not get the job they wanted, or the job was a job of limited potential and they just took it because it was the only thing available. So that was an impact on them, and it cannot be denied. Others got jobs that reasonably that they would have expected upon graduation in normal times. Unfortunately, because of the recession and the slow economy that follows their employment, their opportunity for promotion was greatly restricted. The pace of advancing in their career that they would have expected in normal times had rapidly eroded. So they were tangibly slowed down. Now, not as much as the others who couldn't get traction in the first place. Then there's another group of students who just sailed through with neither positive nor negative effects. Depends upon the demand for their specialization, depends upon the nature of the employer, it depends upon their previous co-op relationships, because some of them were able to move into jobs the employer understood their talent and had the resources to use it fully and proceed forward. And then there's another subset, that they actually thrived. The recession actually gave a boost to their career. So not only did it not slow them down, it actually accelerated them faster than would have been the case without the recession. That is, of course, because they got a platform to show what they could do.
That's pretty interesting. Okay, so now that we know what to expect, and then you did mention 2 groups. You mentioned one that will have more trouble staying on track. How do you recommend they do keep their careers on track?
Well, a couple of things. They should avoid the major mistakes, because some of the graduates make a mistake. And those are the ones who had a high chance of their career being deflected or delayed altogether. And those mistakes are, well, first, in sort of the order, and these are like real mistakes, not hypothetical. I watched them happen. And then I shouted at the student to try to get them to stop. Well, for one thing, to simply deny the recession. I mean, sorry, it's an unhappy experience. Nobody wants to graduate in recession. I don't even want to teach in a recession. But the truth of the matter is it's here. And to deny that it's here you should not deny reality. Math students are men and women of logic. And logic says if you have evidence and it's affecting you, do something about it. So the ones who went into denial, here's an example of what happens if they go into denial. They send letters, the cover letter that accompanies the thing and makes no reference to the recession. They send a cover letter if nothing was happening. Now, I don't know whether they thought the employers didn't notice things were happening or whether they didn't want to jinx themselves. But it made them look naive, if not foolish, because now the employer wants to say, look, young person, do you actually understand that bad things are happening out there? Then there was another group that made an equally disastrous mistake, and they panicked. As opposed to, I mean, one thing to deny it, that's the other extreme, to go into full wart mode. Of course, they consumed too much media. Of course, they thought that depression was coming and the economy was collapsing for the next decade, and a sort of apocalyptic vision of like horror. And in some cases, they completely changed their career plans. In some cases, they dropped out of professions because they thought it was impossible. Again, I shouted at them. Well, the very fact there have been 4 recessions since I started teaching in 81. But the truth is, the bulk of the time between 81 and 2020 is economic expansion, rising employment. And just before the recession, as has happened every other time, all the jobs lost regained, and we were at record high employment. So panic is totally unwarranted. On the other hand, denying the fact that for a couple of years, the economy is going to be poor is was staying the graveyard foolish, and it takes away an opportunity to use much more positive strategies. I can talk about what the other groups did that worked, but those are the first things. First, don't shoot yourself in the foot. Like really, no, I mean, it's a good rule. First, don't harm your prospects in difficult times. What you're trying to do, of course, is to, at the very least, stay on track. And if you can, actually accelerate your career. The students who did best on both of those categories, first acknowledge that there's a recession. Now, in the classes, we actually gave them consequences of the recession so that when they were, say, on an interview, they could knowledgeably talk about the situation. So they already recommend themselves to the employer. In cover letters and in interviews, they would comment, they would say things like, now I understand that there are difficulties and that sales are almost certainly falling in your company. And I understand I'm going to have to make special effort in this job because these are exceptional times and I'm prepared to make an exceptional contribution. Now, do you see why that would recommend them to an employer? And that kind of orientation, which is not changing anything about their experience. It's just, for example, there were cases where they could draw upon the experience in smaller companies that had been under siege for other reasons, and they could say, I understand what happens when finances are tightly constrained. I was working in a medium-sized company, and they lost a major contract, and I was proud to be part of just keeping the whole thing together, even if that meant working abnormal hours under abnormal pressure. Now, you see, just that orientation alone separates you from other persons, and that employer is more likely to give you a job with more responsibility rather than less right from the beginning. Of course, if you start with more responsibility rather than less, you now have a chance to let your light shine. And those who did really well, they found opportunities, and they looked for them explicitly. This is not relying on luck. Luck is the last refuge of the incompetent or lazy. What they did was look for opportunities to showcase their talent. The system is under siege. Most organizations are under siege, including the large ones, by the way. So there is nothing is too big to be unaffected by recessions. So many of the traditional employers of math students, they're all affected in one way. No, they may not be able to go broke, but there is a tightening in the system. And your ability to say, I understand this, I will make a special contribution. But the advantage that gives to a junior student is very powerful, very powerful.
So basically, you're saying that since I'm going to be one of the last ones remaining in the company, might as well make the most of it and try to rise up the ranks, do my best possible in that situation.
Absolutely.
Right?
And speak about it explicitly. The math students, some math students are notorious for not paying attention to the external world. To live in the little math bubble, some of you never leave MC. I know you don't. You get scared when you have to leave MC. You can cope with DC, but beyond those two buildings, you get spooked. I'm not being funny, but it's a serious point. To be able to be offered that opportunity to really show what you can do, you have to sound like you understand the external environment, and there's no reason you can't. It's that some math students perhaps don't feel comfortable speaking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But you're smart men and women, you do your homework. You want to understand how to talk about the recession? There are real sources online where you can get proper commentary. You will know you will not embarrass yourself. No, this is not Joe Blow's anonymous blog. We're talking about going to a credible business media source, like the Globe and Mail, Wall Street Journal, like real publications. So there's nothing stopping a math student, and they should not be intimidated. Why should smart people be intimidated by any problem? That they haven't encountered it before is not the reason to be intimidated.
Mm-hmm. So basically do our research as we
Yes.
go into all of this.
I'm a professor, do your homework. I always like that. It's a good rule, don't you think? But I don't think you've succeeded by not doing your homework.
Oh, I don't know. A lot of assignments were missed.
Yeah, well, yes. Yeah, we all do the best we can.
Yeah, okay, so that makes sense for people who are still in the company, right? Who have the chance to showcase their skills. What would you say to people who lost their jobs? Because a lot of people, to be frank, they got a lot of job offers rescinded in this year. And this will affect the coming years as well. What do you recommend for them? How do they showcase their skills? They don't have a platform to showcase it on.
Okay, certainly it's a challenge, and that has happened in all these previous occasions too. Like perfect jobs, you've signed leases in another city, and now you could at least commitment and no and excuse me and no job. Now there again, what I've always been impressed with is the creativity of math students when they face challenge, so long as they don't panic and don't deny things are going on. So what you don't do in that case when the job is rescinded is just send another 500 resumes out, not sounding like you know there's a recession on. So, but in the CAT strategies that work for those particular students who found their jobs suddenly go poof, I'm going to sound very traditional, but for many of them it worked brilliantly. They simply went to grad school. It's a simple principle. If the job market is so hostile, there's no good job for you. Now again, I caution based on the experience of others, don't take the junk jobs. You may be tempted to take the junk job, the job in a company that's going nowhere with something you're not interested in. It's dangerous because let me just tell you based on the experience what happens to a junk job, because those students taking the junk job end up in my office 5 years later trying to escape a trap they built for themselves. The economy is now booming. Other friends are now having their careers on track. They're stuck in this job, which they took to put a roof over the head. I respect that motivation, of course, but the problem was it was a job in an area they were not interested in. They were competent in it, the degree, you have breadth of skill. So you can force yourself into a box. They forced themselves into a box, not where they wanted to work, not anything they found intellectually interesting. And in some cases, not even a technology, of course, many of you entered tech fields, a technology that didn't even have any growth potential to it. So now they get 5 years of experience that nobody else on earth cares about. So the employer that they have is okay with them, but they don't want to be there at all. And now almost nothing of that experience is transferable. Do you see how that traps them? So we end up 5 years later trying to and I will try to help them plot an escape strategy for that dead end place. So it's better in the beginning not to put yourself in a dead end place. Just logic says, what's your advantage? Your great advantage is your age. For most of you are relatively young. You still can make some mistakes and recover from them. You can still, do some things, and if they don't work out perfectly, you can experiment, and you still have flexibility. So taking the junk job frequently takes your flexibility away, your freedom, with no benefit. Like that's the point, and with no benefit. So carefully thought out grad school can be an ideal way. First, you're not unemployed. Your resume has no strange gaps in it. You will pick, of course, a grad program wisely, even if you have to scramble a bit at the end, which is something you care about, a domain you're interested in, and something that you do your homework and think, okay, there's job potential here. And when the economy's growing strongly again, there are jobs here. And I will be ready with the second degree. And now but there's one other strategy, just mention it briefly. I am honored that so many math students have shared their careers with me, not just when they graduate, but I get career reports. My earliest students are retiring already, and then they tell me about that as well. So I have the opportunity to see the progression of the students over time. And other students have, when they didn't get their job, did a really targeted search looking for a company that needed something done that they could do and that they cared about, right? That would build experience for them. Maybe the company couldn't pay all that well. Maybe it was a medium-sized company. Then they did one of two arguments. They said, look, to the employer, and they did this very directly, with personal contact if they could, a very well-crafted letter or email, and said, look, I know you're struggling and your company's under severe pressure and I know you want to survive. And I think my skills can help you lower your costs so that you live to fight another day. Or my skills, I believe, could affect the product and make it easier to sell in these difficult conditions. And they get some take up on that. I can't tell you any of these are guaranteed for success, but I can tell you odds are it really does work. Right now, there are many high potential companies, the smaller ones, who really can't afford you, or strictly speaking, can't afford what the prime employers who come to Waterloo would pay. But they can pay enough to keep you a roof over your head. And the most important thing they give you is job career-related experience and technical training. No, you may not stay there forever. No, it may not be your preferred location or employer. And it's probably less rewarding financially. But you're laying a groundwork for not having your career dead-ended into that trap. And in the right place, it gives you experience you would not have gotten at that age in another place.
Okay, so just to clarify, the difference between a lower paying job, it's a normal job and a junk job would be that even if it's lower paying, it gives me a situation where I can grow my skills. Versus a junk job just means I get there, I do my work, but I'm not learning anything new and I'm not growing.
That's right. That's right. One job gives you mobility across occupations. It gives you the chance to go from the not ideal job to your ideal job because you're learning new skills and you're getting credible experience that you can put on your resume, which distinguishes you from other people. The other job is a holding pattern job. And if you keep it too long, you can get stuck there. I have watched, again, I say this with respect to everyone listening. I've watched people get stuck for a decade. And I can guarantee you at the end of that decade, they are very unhappy. Because in their heart, they know this is way less than they're capable of. It is not what they dreamed of when they were 20. It is not the reward they wanted, but they are not having the life they'd hoped for, not even close to it. This is a bitter sensation. And unfortunately, they panicked. In the beginning, there's no principle in science. Small change in initial conditions can dramatically set the trajectory and wildly divert the trajectory over time. And that's why this is both dangerous time for graduates, but a time for opportunity, because if you position yourself right, you can accelerate your career.
That makes sense. Yeah. And then I'm going back to what you mentioned about grad school, just so we can clear it up for people watching. If someone does want to go to grad school at this point, they're close to graduation, are there any resources at Waterloo that you would recommend they look into?
Oh, yes. Over all these decades, I have worked actively with career services at the University of Waterloo. Now this is called the Center of Career Action. I've lived through their various name changes. I've lived through a lot of name changes over the years. But the Center for Career Action has resources for all of this, to search for grad school, to prep for grad school, to provide technical information, to provide information on scholarships, there's a lot of support there. Also, the graduate officers in the individual departments of mathematics can also, they of course advise the grad students at the Faculty of Mathematics, but those grad officers can also provide guidance to an undergraduate who's considering a graduate program, whether at Waterloo or elsewhere. Some of you may believe that Waterloo offers the best programs, and of course then you should take them. But for some of you, you may decide based on your interests and experience that a grad program in a different place could serve you. Well, many of your faculty members have experience with those grad programs. Some are graduates of the grad programs themselves. So there's a lot of faculty expertise that's open to math students that they should take advantage of. You do realize you have the right to talk to any professor at the University of Waterloo, whether enrolled in his or her class or not. Yes, you do.
Oh.
Yes, you do.
How do you recommend reaching out to them?
Well, of course, in the olden days, I would have said, go to their office and knock on the door. Now, of course, you cannot do this. And unfortunately, faculty members are besieged by email. I sit at my terminal and more messages come in faster than I'm answering them. But the truth is, make the best efforts. Email is, of course, unfortunately, the only way to do it, and make clear a very targeted question. So don't send any professor a message that goes, I'm confused, what shall I do with my life? Ask a very precise, targeted question. I'm considering going to Carnegie Mellon in XYZ. I see from your resume, keep in mind, the bibliographies of faculty members are posted. I see that you're a graduate of Carnegie Mellon. May I ask some questions about your experience at the school? Now, if the faculty member has time, many of them will be able to respond. Not all of them, because of the fact that we're reinventing the University of Waterloo online this afternoon. So lot of challenges. But expertise is here, and Center of Career Action is open, obviously virtually, and ready to help you.
That sounds great. Okay, and then to shift to a more topical tone, so we did talk about earlier in the talk about how since we have opportunity to prove ourselves, so that can involve like staying late, putting all our all in a company that can really grow, and then we can grow with. And then, but we also have to consider everything else that's going on, because this is a very unique period in time. We have COVID, we have a lot of social issues that, very close to our hearts that we should be acting on. It's something this is not a normal time for any of us. So how do you recommend, balancing the fact that it's a recession along with all this other stuff, along with the pressure of being in quarantine or the pressure of, all the other stuff that's going on in the world?
Well, without a doubt, it adds to the challenge. How could it not? The very fact that so many things must be done remotely and not in person is already severely disadvantageous for more reasons than we've already talked about. It adds to the challenge. Now, I'm going to just go based on the previous recessions. Now, in some cases, the recessions were more alarming than this one because they were happening for systemic economic reasons. This recession, we know why the recession is occurring, because you can't go and shop. I mean, you don't need even a single course in economics to know why people are being unemployed, because there's nobody in the stores, nobody in the restaurants, and factories are closed, right? No any question. In the past, some of the recessions were also extremely stressful for many people because they didn't know why it was happening, and that added to an enormous degree of uncertainty about the world is coming unglued and I don't understand it. Here we at least understand it. The pandemic is really quite clear. There's a virus that can kill some of us, and to protect all of us, we need to engage in physical distancing, for example. Most people understand that, most of the time anyway, and so that, oddly enough, even though there are all these other challenges going on, and of course there are things beyond the pandemic, Falah, as you know perfectly well, and they are adding to social and political stress. And I have to look at anything that involves the United States, my blood pressure goes up. And I'm an old guy, and that's dangerous. It's dangerous to me. But again, one has to acknowledge these challenges. But this is the age in which you were born. Unless you want to complain to your parents that they, had you at the wrong time, and it's all their fault. I think a more mature approach might be to say, okay, these are the cards I'm dealt with, and I'm going to play my hand very effectively, because at the end of the day, no matter what, in public health challenges, in political challenges, in just social pressure, financial challenges, the bumping and grinding of life, in all of those cases, math students, in my mind, are extremely well positioned to actually provide the thing that society needs. Because what society needs from you, yes, it needs your technical skills, but what it fundamentally needs is your imagination to create new solutions. What is clearly the case is that solutions that we've done for lots of things are inadequate. And that much is, I don't care what domain you're looking at, there are always things that need to be improved, some urgently. And you have commanding, practical, applied skills. Well, deploy them. And the highest deployment of anybody's skill from the Faculty of Mathematics is to call up an innovation. And ideally, from my perspective, of course I'm biased because of the problem lab, where you would tackle something at a big problem, not a little problem. Don't be intimidated. But you see, I know you guys have talent. You've demonstrated to me year after year, class after class. And occasionally I'm frustrated because you seem not to understand you have talent. And you set yourself to do tasks, can I speak plainly, beneath you, beneath your capability. In today's tumultuous and stressed out world, you math students, the graduates, failing to maximize their impact by focusing their energies on the most important problems is tragic, because the world needs them working flat out.
Yeah, and on like a a positive note, we are very lucky that the Faculty of Math, our graduates, a lot of our jobs are in tech, which means we can do them remotely. So we're we're better off than a lot of the other graduates, in like all this whole year. So that could be something in our benefit.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. But can I make one cautionary note? I'm sorry, I take this really serious. I take this really seriously. The cautionary note is this: especially for those who can work remotely, and who may be at employers who will encourage them to do this in the new normal after the economy recovers. Remember, it's after, not whether. After the economy recovers, there'll be employers who will, think working from home is fine. However, I ask all the mathies to notice this, that the big decisions will still be made nose to nose. Don't get too comfortable working in your home. You want your career to thrive. You still need to do physical one-on-one networking. If you want to have responsibility, you got to be pushing yourself into social contexts. We both know that that is not what math students are renowned for doing. And again, it will limit your talent, the application of your talent. So be careful. Working from home for some mathies may seem like the ideal environment. And then in that case, they will, for the rest of their careers, be told what to do. I want mathies to shape their tasks. Like I want you, 5 years after you graduate, Falah, to be telling your employer, I want to do X for us. I mean, something the employer wants, but you pick the task. And the employer says, yes, that's a really good idea. Go do it. Create a team. Go do it. Here's some budget. Like that's 5 years. That should be a goal where you start shaping. First, you shape the work. You should be able to do that as soon as you can. And in 5 or so years, you start suggesting what should be done. And the person who suggests it gets to do it. And you suggest the stuff that most interests you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, and then I'll be going over to Q&A from the audience soon, but just a couple of small things before we go there. You did say that, usually jobs, like we go back to the stats we had before, so after recession, how many years on average does that last? How long do you think we'll be in this situation before we go back to the old normal?
Well, what math students have is a considerable advantage for those who are going to pursue their careers within Canada. Canada's rate of job creation has been, since 1960, the highest of the major mature industrial states, excluding China. Again, because China is an exceptional case. But if you look at the mature industrial states, that includes Japan, the United States, the European Union, that's fundamentally the mature industrial world, our job creation rates are actually the highest, which means the recovery from the recession, so the jobs fall, then are recovered, and then go to another peak. In all the previous recessions, well, for example, let's not quite generalize so much. If we look at the last 2 recessions, the recovery of the Canadian economy was faster than in the United States and other countries. So in terms of those pursuing jobs within Canada, our historical record, and I'm about evidence, not hopefulness. The evidence is for the past now nearly 70 years, the Canadian economy on job creation has outperformed all the other mature industrial states. And that's just a fact. And there's nothing happened that suddenly is there's just no reason for that to change. So went back to normal economically, 18 months to 2 years. Again, the norms from the past. But don't wait. But don't wait, please, mathies, don't wait. Take action now in expectation that things are going back to normal, but don't wait. Don't decide you're going to live in your parents' basement for 18 months until it's safe to come out.
So take a little bit of risk.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
This is the time of your life when you can.
Yeah, we're young.
Yes, and stay away from the junk jobs.
All right. Okay. One general question before we move on to Q&A. What is the key to a very successful math-oriented career? Because then you've taught mathies over the years, just like quick points.
Well, yes. It can be said quickly because they've shared this with me. This is not my recommendation. This is just my observation of what they've shared with me. The ability to deploy their skills to solve new problems, not to just take orders and solve existing problems the existing way. They always push the envelope, no matter what technical thing they're supposed to be doing. They always try to do it better in more creative or perhaps to more unusual purposes. And the second thing that accompanies that math, and I'm speaking specifically of math, and specifically generally the broad sector, both the financial sector and IT. So be as innovative as you can and teach yourself how to communicate that innovation. The person who creates the innovation must be the advocate of it. And so if there's a skill that you still don't have that allows you to speak comfortably up to your ideas, then that's what you develop, because I watched the mathies do it. The good ones already had it. They practiced that ability to be an advocate during their undergraduate or graduate days. And if they didn't have it, they actually invested time and energy, took speaking courses, because they were not going to they were not going to get stuck behind an acoustic barrier because other people could express their ideas better, even though they were the smartest person in the room. So they learned how to speak and do justice to their ideas.
So one of the most important skills going forward are interpersonal skills.
Well, specifically communication plus innovation.
Great.
Okay. Together.
Yeah. All right, we're going to move on to audience Q&A. So I'm reading them as they come in. So I want to ask as a fresh graduate, are we better to take a year off during 2020 to find some internship or get some certificates, or go to graduate school later or go to graduate school this year instead?
Well, my first comment would be, depends on the grad school and the program. Sometimes, since this is all June, it will be hard to get into a program in September. Now, not all of them, it depends. Because of the recession, a lot of schools have waived their normal deadlines for submissions. So just keep that in mind. So September grad school may in some cases be possible, but in some cases not, because of the deadlines. And the places have already been offered to other students who are going to take them up, and there's simply no space. But if you take that year of other kinds of explorations, all I would say is based again on what some students, what they actually did and what they shared with me. One, make sure you have a plan. So if you're going to use that year to do some internship, to get some extra experience, for example, be an RA in some faculty member's lab. Make sure it's going to produce experience that you actually want to have, not any old experience. I'm sorry, it's going to sound so traditional, but have a plan. And the truth is, you can use this quote gap year, different version of a gap year, if you plan it carefully. What you're planning to make sure that you're getting both experience and skills that take you to your ideal job, not hope for the best. And the plan is, like, the best students who did this, when I said, what is the goal of the year of this pattern of activity? And they had a clear goal. Well, what I want to do is I want to enter industry X, and I'm going to get experience in industry X because I have almost none from my co-op. So I can actually fill a gap in my resume that is going to slow me down. So since I can't get a job in my desired field, but that was already a stretch because of my gap in my experience, then I'm going to fill that gap one way or the other. And I've watched that work like brilliantly in this situation where there was one student moved into his parents' basement to sustain himself, while he moved heaven and earth to create the skill in an industry in which he had no experience. He now runs a successful company in his passion, which happened not to be his previous co-op jobs, because he grew as a person and decided, okay, these co-op jobs are demonstrating to me that that's interesting, but I don't want to do it. And by the time he's graduating, he doesn't know what he wants to do. And his gap was, okay, I got to reinvent myself, going to do it. And if that means living in my parents' basement, I'll live there. It's humiliating, but I'm going to live there anyway. I remember when he told me about it, he actually explained that, because it seemed kind of embarrassing, that it was like a little apartment because he had his own basement door to come and go as he wished. But he had passion and commitment and a plan.
Yeah, I think given the situation, it's completely okay to do, stuff that you might not traditionally do, because this is a unique situation and you got to take the stuff that will get you to the point where you want to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, we have another question. Should a new graduate postpone their entrepreneurial dreams or grad school in times of recession and focus on a traditional career path instead?
No.
No.
Watch out.
Elaborate,
well,
please.
no. Well, because this is not, you see, that's, you know, dumbing down your ambition. If that's what you really want to do, acknowledge the fact that there's some challenges right now. But to shift yourself into a traditional position, into a traditional path, you may not get out of it. I say truly, you must search in your mind what it is you want to do. And if your heart is to create some kind of innovation, if you want to create an entrepreneurial endeavor, it does not matter what that would be. It is certainly the case that some of those ambitions will be very difficult, if not or almost impossible to pursue in the next 18 months. Now, the 18 months is a second in your life. So letting adversity for 18 months stop you from your dream. Because if you then take that traditional job, and I've watched this happen, I watched one of the most creative students I've ever taught. And I've taught so many. When I say most creative, I really do mean that. She was like just exactly what you would prize as a person: focus, talent, ambition, articulate, all of those good things. Recession happens. She takes this job with a company that can remain nameless, but is a gigantic one. And it was, you know, I mean, they wanted her and paid her professionally. She's still there.
Oh.
And that's decades she's been there. And I know when she was 20, that is not what that person wanted.
Yeah, and everyone's like junk job can look different. One might be a successful career, might not be the most fulfilling thing for someone else.
Absolutely. Like I know people, you were exactly right. You're totally right. Because I know people in the same job this person has that I just mentioned, who's unsatisfied, who have thrived. When I meet them, the other ones in the same job, they can't stop talking about their career. They're so excited what they can do. They describe a bit like the persons in the videos that preceded this event, that kind of thing. Really cool work. And then sitting beside them, of course, some of the ones who think it's really cool got promoted. And the person who's the 9-to-5er is, well,
so what I'm gathering basically is there's no one right answer or no one right role.
Yeah.
It just really is up to what you find interesting. Yeah, and then to follow up on the entrepreneurial stuff, do you have any specific tips for someone that will pursue the entrepreneurial route despite the recession?
Absolutely. The entrepreneurial opportunities are still there. Our society has never needed innovations more acutely than they need now. I would just urge you to make sure you're solving an important problem, not a problem. They think the greatest mistake of all entrepreneurs, from math or not, is to solve accessible problems like low-hanging fruit. But if you really want a successful enterprise in any kind of time, because remember, just because it's a recession doesn't mean you should change what the nature of the enterprise is. The enterprise should be a strong one, and the more important the problem is you're solving, the more. Some of my former students are raising money right now, right in the middle of the recession. And they are, because they're solving a really important problem. The investors, no doubt it's really important. And the investors know that when the pandemic is over and the recession is over, that product, when it's being developed, when it's finished, will be in demand.
Do students have support on campus to figure out the problem is an important problem, or to help with their entrepreneurial side?
Sorry, please say again.
Do they have support on campus to help figure out if this stuff is the way they should be going?
Well, when I started in 81, there's practically no supports, and I have been so pleased to watch over the past 40 years almost, supports grow dramatically. So, of course, there are supports at Concept, which is deals with the very early stage enterprise. There's, of course, Velocity itself. There's the Problem Lab that I run. So, for example, we have $30,000 in money to reimburse R&D for the pitch is in the spring term. So, you know, there are supports. There's advisors. We will do advice. Concept will do advice. Velocity will do advice. Plus, in some cases, tangible support, office space. When, well, of course, when we're not locked down anymore. So there are absolutely supports, and there are now more supports than they've ever been at the University of Waterloo in our history.
Mm-hmm. All right, another question. Any advice on how to stand out as a new grad during this specific work from home time?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. because it just makes sense. It's the same rules elsewhere, except it's more urgent. Because if you were in a physical workspace, it's a little easier to have casual conversations with your boss, and of course make sure they're not casual, make sure they're conversations to a point. But you bump into people. That, of course, opportunity is gone now. So one of the things that has worked best, again, of course, people have been working from home for a long time. So while the degree is now unusual, but it's not that this is the first time. I've been working from home for 25 years, right? So the working from home, when you're trying to stand out, the thing that works really best is to ask a question. So if someone gives you a task, ask a task-related question. That means your manager is going to answer it because it's about the task that your manager has assigned you. Make sure that question is not just a routine, is it due on Friday afternoon? That you should know anyway. Ask a question that penetrates the problem more deeply. So, let me use a computer science one because a mob of my students are in computer science. You've been asked to design a piece of software, and you got the technical specs. It's supposed to have like 5 features, and you send an email and say, shouldn't we be adding this 6th feature because it'd be so useful to the customer? You want to stand out? That's not normally. The CSer puts his head down and writes the code. Independent function. The students who, or this, again, these are real examples. I don't have to make up stuff. Or another student who actually thrived in a company that can remain nameless, but a company not renowned for technical moving quickly, had an extraordinary career. Because what he would do in any technical meeting, the technical lead and the whole the meeting. Now they're occurring virtually. It doesn't change the fact that it's still a meeting and the techies are having a talk about getting something done. He always was the voice of the customer. And so he's technical issue. I think this would be difficult for the customer to actually understand what this aspect of the function. That in this case, his company, his manager's impressed. Then the manager, starts giving that particular, this was a co-op student, that particular student, but it would apply to regulars, that particular person responsibility. He said, well, okay, look at some of these other market-related issues. Like his job is expanding unofficially. His job description didn't change and his income didn't change, but the real work he's doing is changing. At the end of that, by the way, he got an invitation to join a marketing initiative for that company. He's just left all of his age contemporaries behind, because at the end of the day, I don't care how good your technical skills are, what drives those commercial companies are sales.
All right, just a couple more audience Q&A questions. This is a really common one. Any advice on getting research experience if you don't have any currently?
And research experience is extraordinarily valuable. Find research that appeals to you, like that is interesting to you and is part of a career plan, so not any old thing. And try to volunteer with every faculty member you can get your hands on. Again, we're all constrained with budgets. There are a lot of projects where you could use volunteers. I'm sure it'll have to be volunteers because most of the research budgets are at Waterloo fully committed. Now, not all of them, so actually there could be a little cash available, but I'm talking about pure volunteer because that experience can be invaluable. Now, again, because you're going to volunteer your time, make sure you're volunteering it in a focused purpose to advance your career. Yes, you're trying to help the prof or somebody else get a research project accomplished. But if you're doing it for free, then you better make sure it is a skill, it is the experience you need to advance you where you want to go, not where someone else wants you to go. And again, that has worked in the past. And of course, there's no reason to restrict yourself just to the University of Waterloo if you're a volunteer. There's research going on in universities all around the place. Some of you, of course, are not in Waterloo. Just go to the nearest university. Fortunately, of course, research activities online. So with a little effort, you will certainly find out. You will certainly find out what is going on.
All right. Okay, this is our last audience Q&A question. If you could leave us with one key takeaway for the future as we take our next steps, what would it be?
Well, I'm going to have to say, and I wished I could say more about it, but I actually can't, even if we had more time. you will not really use your courage, you will not really use your talent unless you can leave your comfort zone. You just can't. When you're young, you have not experienced all you can, and to stretch your talent, you must leave your comfort zone. And that means you have to have courage. And that's what I wish the graduates of 2020. Courage to pursue your talent, courage to drive it to its highest level. Courage is indispensable.
We are very, very close to wrapping up. Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share?
Enjoy your life. Just, life is an adventure. Enjoy it to the full. And again, just push that talent. You never want to say, I should have done something else. Never should say, oh, I should have taken the path not taken. Courage to have just a really good time and make the world better in doing so.
Thank you. That was very inspirational. Thank you to all our virtual guests out there, wherever you may be. And most importantly, thank you to the class of 2020. I know this is a very stressful time, but you made it this far and you will make it through all of this. We have a last video, and thank you once again and congratulations.
I would like to offer my congratulations to the class of 2020. My name is Kevin Hare. I'm the Interim Dean of the Faculty of Mathematics. I am also a proud alumni from this faculty, having graduated 23 years ago with the Bachelor of Mathematics. Unfortunately, like you, I was unable to physically attend convocation that summer, albeit for different reasons. This did not end my relationship with the Faculty of Math, and I came back to visit many times, and 23 years later, I find myself as the Interim Dean of the faculty. So my advice is stay in touch, do fantastic things that I know you will, and I'm looking forward to seeing which one of you will be the Dean of the faculty in 23 years.